pack them into cities. Don't let them stay in small towns where they can actually own property or maybe raise their own food. It's going to be a lot easier to take their guns away from them if they're all concentrated in a city. The whole concentration of the population. I mean, I'm trying to point out it's not just about a transportation issue, because when you look behind it, and of course they'll say, oh, this is a conspiracy theory, you know, this is something that's not really going to happen, there is no North American Union plan. But yet when you read the technical reports, you know, you have to read the reports on modal transportation and how they look at it impacting a national system, and you know, global labor and how they intend to manufacture and move products. Then you begin to see the plans where in fact there is a desire to reconfigure the transportation system at the disadvantage of small towns, with the assumption you're going to move people into these cities, mega cities, and people aren't going to care about being Texans anymore. They're going to be North Americans. And that's going to be the perspective of the transportation system. I mean, otherwise, why do you have Spain in this deal? You know, that's the whole idea of these public-private partnerships. Sell the infrastructure that's owned today by the citizens of Texas, so the rights to that infrastructure go to Spain and are operated by Spain. And oh, by the way, this is going to be good for you because you can travel faster on these highways and you want it to pay taxes to get them built.
Well, as we know, these plans are crafted by Council on Foreign Relations and Bilderberg types. They make most of the profits. They have the insider deals. But switching topics, of course, everyone's still talking about the terrible Sandy Hook tragedy. And you wrote on that as well, a point that we've been making here at InfoWars, that 90+% of all these mass shootings, the shooter ends up, he's on SSRIs, some kind of pharmaceutical, psychiatric care, and it's just devastating. Nobody really ever raises an outcry about the drugging of these young people and why that contributes to them going crazy. Of course, violent video games also plays a role. But give us your take, sir.
Well, again, this was something I followed two really good psychiatrists, a guy named David Healy, who's a British psychiatrist. He's running a group called RXISK. It's risk.org, X like a prescription, and the letters ISK.org. And the psychiatrist and a guy named Peter Breggin, who is a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, formerly with the National Institute of Mental Health, now working in private practice. Each of these guys have written a ton of books. And what they've identified is that the kids who tend to be these shooters are, they're described, psychiatrists get a hold of them through the parents. They say they've got some kind of a behavioral problem, and they start prescribing drugs. And these drugs have almost like a 90% or 95% correlation with the violence we're seeing in these school shootings. Over 90% of the school shootings are linked to the kids involved having taken some form of psychiatrically prescribed medication that has a psychotropic effect. In other words, it not only modifies their behavior, it modifies their thinking. And for these adolescents taking these very potent prescribed medications by psychiatrists, it affects their behavior in a violent direction or suicidal direction, or a combination, suicidal and violent.
Well, I think instead of calling to ban guns and to create registrations and fingerprinting and restrictions like Feinstein and the other gun grabbers want, we ought to call for an end of the ties between pharmaceuticals and big government, and that is one of the most corrupt areas you'll ever find. Of course, the links tie over into all kinds of other conspiratorial things, but they have really bought out the FDA and the other regulatory agencies and run roughshod over the country and put in all kinds of dangerous drugs that people are taking without the proper monitoring.
Well, and see, again, this is a part of the same processes of getting the society controlled. In other words, you go back a few generations, and if a kid had a problem in a school, there'd be counseling, the parents would get involved. Today they say kids got, some fancy name, ADD or whatever they want to prescribe. That's going to be the disease. And they say, well, get them Ritalin or Prozac or, some other form of drugs because it's easy and it's controlled, it's government, sanctioned. There's money being made by the government. There's money being made by the pharmaceutical companies. The kid doesn't get cured. The kid just gets drugged out, and his mind or her mind gets corrupted. They begin to get violent, suicidal. I mean, this again is, you want to read Brave New World and see the psychotropic drugs as being used as a social control mechanism by a government that's concerned of controlling the population, not curing the population. Mostly these are not sick kids. They might be lonely. They might have some emotional problems. If we allowed God in these schools, we might even have some counseling of a religious nature or morality nature of these kids. Find out what's the family like. But no, government comes in, prescribes the kid's got an ailment, gives him drugs, and then when the kid becomes violent, so let's take away the guns. It's not a solution. The only solution would be arming the schools. Go into any federal building. The politicians who are passing these laws don't rely on no gun zones for their safety. You go into any federal building in the United States, you're going to go through a metal detector. There's going to be armed guards everywhere with federal badges. You're going to be on cameras. They understand security when it comes to protecting the federal employees. They just, these kids are put out here as victims on an agenda to get the guns from the hands of the population.
I agree, sir. Economically speaking, we've seen both parties supposedly holding their nose to forge this big fiscal cliff deal. Basically, it's like the Coyote and Roadrunner cartoons. As soon as we look down, we're going to realize we're not in any kind of sustainable system anyway. But what is your take on this economic patchwork deal here?
Well, it was a disgrace. I mean, first of all, the whole program was supposed to have done something to reduce the deficit. Now we've got the Congressional Budget Office saying this thing is going to increase, what, $7 trillion, $4 trillion over the next decade. They put more spending in the bill. Congress can only spend. No congressman or congresswoman is going to vote to tell their constituents we took money away from you. The system is broke, and you've got a president who is going to manipulate the system to create the most monstrosity of government you've ever seen. Obama has a big government mentality. I just wrote another ebook. It came out over the weekend on the Obama's plan to basically, I'm sorry about the phone ringing. I should have turned it off.
That's all right, Dr. Corsi.
We should have had a plan to, Obama's whole plan here is basically to bankrupt the United States. It's the Cloward-Piven theory. And if you look at the Cloward-Piven theory, you're going to find what Obama is saying, and has been saying from the beginning, is you get these debts to a limit where we can't pay for them, no matter how much we raise taxes. The United States is bankrupt, and then they think they can take the United States and make it into a socialist system, a real socialist system.
Well, on that point, I just want to bring up, of course, back in the FDR days, he held 4 terms as president, leading to the constitutional amendment to restrict presidents to only 2 terms. I think it's quite dangerous when presidents of either party are reelected to that unaccountable final term, whether it's 2 or more. Obviously, I don't think we should go beyond 2. But your own work, you played such a role in the John Kerry, George Bush election with your Swift Boat Veterans book, and they seized upon it, the Bush administration did, as a major campaign platform. Why do you think we didn't see Mitt Romney seize upon the birth certificate issue or any number of very damning issues that could have hurt Obama? Instead, he essentially let him skate to re-election. At least that's been my view.
Well, I'm writing a book about what went wrong in the election for the GOP. I think this election that we just went through with Romney reminds me of the 1948 election where Dewey lost to Truman. They thought Dewey was going to win. Dewey did not engage Truman in any debates. He didn't press any issues. He didn't defend the GOP record. He did a Me Too campaign. He was a nice guy, very flying high. Truman fought a populist campaign. He got a whistle-stop campaign with the railroads. He beat Dewey every time he had a chance, called him a rich guy. Same dynamics. And Truman had the FDR coalition together. The labor unions, the minorities, the immigrants. He was playing to people who wanted and expected their government checks. Do you think the woman who was talking about the Obama phone cared where Obama was born or whether he was a natural born citizen? I mean, Obama could have killed somebody in the front lawn of the White House. And many of his constituents, first of all, wouldn't have cared or would have said the person he killed deserved it. I mean, what they want to know is who's going to get them their checks, who's going to keep the government dole flowing. And that's the entire interest group politics that we've now got. It's another dynamic. Obama, as advisors, changed the game back to the 1948 and really Depression era formula that FDR figured. Get the people to be dependent on government, they'll vote for you, no matter who you are, what you've done, whether it's constitutional or not. FDR proved that. As long as the interest politics gets the people their checks and they can stay dependent on government.
It's shameful, too, because that kind of great society spending is not only unsustainable at the federal government level, but it's such a trap at the individual level. People take that money, but they never have any real hope for creating their own lives down the road. You never get out of that. It just creates these urban wastelands that they're trying to draw us all into, regardless of race or identity politics or any of those issues.
It's a dependency formula.
Certainly.
As soon as you start taking money from the government and depending on it, you've given up freedom. And our founding fathers knew this. Our founding fathers created a system of free enterprise where you could benefit, where you could have individual growth. They predicated on belief in God. They had freedom as their core values. This is not Obama or FDR. They want the Obama phone people voting for them and not thinking hard about the issues. Obama campaigned on that he was not going to raise taxes on the middle class right out of the gate before he's inaugurated the second time. This fiscal cliff agreement, 77% of taxpayers get a less in their take-home pay because they did not extend the FICA payroll tax 2% that was forgiven in the surplus legislation. That's now reinstated. And most taxpayers, 77%, are mostly middle class, are going to get a tax increase. So Obama's lying right from the gate. But it's all class warfare. Read my 2 ebooks, Saul Alinsky, The Evil Genius Behind Obama, and this new one, Obama's Plan to Bankrupt America, the Cloward-Piven Theory. You've got to understand that these dynamics are what's driving Obama. And it's a move towards socialism, it's a move towards government dependency, and it's not going to stop. And the GOP is now just a Me Too party. It's going to have to completely reformulate itself, and I don't know whether it's going to be capable of, winning another election in 2014 or 16. GOP's got a lot of rebuilding and rethinking to do, and it's right now in disarray.
We appreciate you joining us, Dr. Corsi. Tell us where we can find your work, both at WorldNet Daily and any other sites you'd like to give out.
WND.com. I'm a senior staff reporter. Take a look at 1776nation.com, 1776nation.com. I do a lot of my Tea Party writing there. And my books, of course, can be found on Amazon.com.
We appreciate you, sir. Take care.
Thank you very much.
And that is all for tonight's InfoWars Nightly News, but I want to resound what Dr. Corsi was talking about. I submit that independence, not dependence, is the way to go. Our forefathers did have a dream. They were never perfect. Institutions like slavery have always been deplorable. We don't want to further them by giving in to dependence on government, because that's exactly what it leads to. Dependence is just another name for slavery. Keep watching. Stay tuned. Help us out financially at prisonplanet.tv. You can become a member, download your information library, spread it to everyone around. You can also get the InfoWars magazine, a glossy, wonderful photocopy issue. Here's our latest one, 2013, the year America dies, ? And there is, of course, planetinfowars.com. Good night.